Rain hammered the tin roof of the porch like it was trying to break through. 8-year-old Micah Turner stood barefoot on the cold concrete, clutching a garbage bag stuffed with everything he owned. 2 shirts, a pair of jeans, and a photograph of his mother that he'd folded so many times the crease had worn through her face. His stepfather, Dale Whitfield, stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, not even bothering to step outside into the rain. "Take him," Dale said. "I'm done." The woman on the steps below didn't move at first. She was maybe 50, maybe younger. It was hard to tell under the layers of coats she wore to survive Ohio winters on the street. Her name was Loretta, and she'd been walking past this exact house every night for 3 weeks, pushing a shopping cart with a busted wheel, looking for a dry spot to sleep. She looked at Dale. Then she looked at the boy. "You're joking," Loretta said. "Tell me you're joking." "Dialogue, Dale. Does it look like I'm joking? His mother's dead. He's not mine. I got 2 kids of my own inside that actually belong to me, and I am not spending another dime on a kid that isn't blood." Narration. Micah didn't cry. That was the strange part. He just stood there, rain soaking through his thin t-shirt, staring at the floorboards like if he looked hard enough, he could disappear into them. Loretta climbed the porch steps slow, her knees cracking with every one. Dialogue, Loretta. He's 8 years old, Dale. 8. You're gonna hand an 8-year-old boy off to a stranger on the street like he's a bag of trash you're setting out for pickup. Dialogue, Dale. You want him or not? 'Cause I got a business trip in the morning and I am not dealing with this. Narration. Loretta looked past Dale, into the warm light of the house behind him. She could see the shape of 2 other kids at the kitchen table, eating dinner like nothing in the world was wrong. She could smell something roasting in the oven. And out here in the cold stood a boy nobody wanted. She made a decision in that moment that would change both of their lives forever. Dialogue, Loretta. Fine. I'll take him. Narration. Dale's shoulders dropped like a weight had been lifted off him. Dialogue, Dale. Good. Smart choice. Narration. He turned to go back inside, already reaching for the door, already halfway back to his warm dinner and his warm life, when Loretta's voice stopped him cold. Dialogue, Loretta. One thing though. Dialogue, Dale. What? Dialogue, Loretta. You're gonna regret this. Not next week. Not next year. But someday, Dale Whitfield, you are going to stand somewhere and wish to God you could take this moment back. Narration. Dale laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was the laugh of a man who genuinely believed nothing bad could ever touch him. Dialogue, Dale. Yeah, okay, lady. Whatever you say. Narration. The door shut. The porch light clicked off a second later. Like even the house didn't want to keep looking at what had just happened. Loretta knelt down in front of Micah, rain dripping off the brim of her old baseball cap. Dialogue, Loretta. Hey, look at me, baby. You got a name. Dialogue, Micah. Micah. Dialogue, Loretta. Micah. Okay, Micah, I don't have much. I don't have a house, I don't have a bed, I don't even have a real dinner tonight. But I promise you this, nobody is ever gonna leave you out in the rain again. Not while I'm breathing. Narration. She didn't know it yet, but that promise would be the easiest one she'd ever have to keep, and the hardest one she'd ever have to explain 15 years later, when the truth about who Micah Turner really was finally came out. Because Dale Whitfield had made one mistake that night. A mistake bigger than throwing away a child. He never checked the paperwork his late wife had left behind. The paperwork sitting in a lockbox in the attic 3 feet above where he slept every night, that named Micah, not his own 2 children, as the sole heir to a trust fund worth $4.2 million. Loretta didn't know that either. Not yet. All she knew was that a little boy needed somewhere warm to sleep, and she had a shopping cart with just enough room for one more. They walked 3 blocks before Micah said another word. Loretta pushed her cart with one hand and kept the other on the boy's shoulder, steering him around the potholes she knew by heart, the ones that filled up with water every time it rained. They ended up under the overpass on Route 9, where a handful of others had already claimed their spots for the night. An old man named Cooper who used to work the steel mills before his lungs gave out, and a younger woman named Denise who kept mostly to herself and never explained why. Cooper looked up as they approached, squinting through the dark. Dialogue, Cooper. Loretta, who's this? Dialogue, Loretta. This is Micah. He's with me now. Dialogue, Cooper. With you? Loretta, you can barely feed yourself. Dialogue, Loretta. Well, now I gotta feed too. That's just how it is. Narration. Cooper studied the boy for a long moment. The soaked t-shirt, the garbage bag, the hollow look in his eyes that no 8-year-old should ever have. Something in his face softened. Dialogue, Cooper. There's a dry spot by the pillar. Kid can have my blanket for tonight. Dialogue, Loretta. Cooper, I'm not taking your. Dialogue, Cooper. Wasn't asking permission, Loretta. Give him the blanket. Narration. Loretta wrapped the scratchy wool blanket around Micah's shoulders. He hadn't spoken since giving his name. She sat down next to him, close enough that their shoulders touched, and pulled a crushed granola bar out of her coat pocket, the last food she had. Dialogue, Loretta. Here. Eat. Dialogue, Micah. You should eat it. You're hungry too. Dialogue, Loretta. Baby, I've been hungry for 6 years. One more night won't kill me. You eat. Narration. Micah took the granola bar but didn't eat it right away. He just held it, turning it over in his small hands like he was trying to figure out if this was real. If a stranger under a bridge actually cared more about him in 5 minutes than the man who'd raised him for 3 years ever had. Dialogue, Micah. Why'd he do that? Dale. Why'd he give me away? Narration. Loretta chose her words carefully. She'd learned a long time ago that lying to a child never actually protected them. It just delayed the hurt and made it worse when it finally landed. Dialogue, Loretta. Some people, when they lose somebody they love, they don't know what to do with the pieces that get left behind. Your mama passing, that broke something in him. Don't make it right. Doesn't make it fair. But some men, when they're broken, they just start throwing things away so they don't have to look at 'em anymore. Dialogue, Micah. I'm not a thing. Dialogue, Loretta. No. No, you are not. And don't you ever let anybody make you believe you are. You hear me? Narration. Micah nodded, and for the first time since the porch, his eyes filled with tears. He didn't sob. He just let them fall silently, the way kids do when they've already learned that crying loud doesn't get you anything except more trouble. Loretta pulled him into her side and let him cry into her coat, which smelled like rain and cigarette smoke and something faintly like hope. Narration. What Micah didn't know that night, what none of them knew, was that 11 miles away, in a filing cabinet inside a law office on 5th Street, a document was sitting in a folder marked Turner Estate, pending. A document his mother, Angela Turner, had filed 2 years before she died. A document that named a trustee, a lawyer named Robert Ashford, who had been trying for 6 months to locate the boy the trust was meant for. Dale Whitfield knew Robert Ashford's name. He'd met him once, briefly, at Angela's funeral, but Dale had never returned his calls. Dale assumed it was just paperwork about Angela's modest life insurance policy. A few $1,000s, nothing worth the hassle. Dale had no idea that Angela Turner, in the 2 years before her death, had quietly built a private investment portfolio that had multiplied beyond anything either of them could have imagined. Money she'd set aside in secret, terrified that if Dale ever knew about it, he'd find a way to control it or worse, control her. She'd protected that money the only way she knew how. She wrote her son's name on it and no one else's. Narration. Under the overpass, Micah finally fell asleep against Loretta's shoulder, the granola bar still unwrapped in his hand. Loretta stayed awake most of the night, watching the rain fall past the edge of the bridge, thinking about the promise she'd made on that porch. She had no idea she wasn't just protecting an abandoned little boy. She was protecting a millionaire who didn't know it yet. Loretta had a system. She'd never admit it out loud, but survival on the street required more planning than most 9-to-5 jobs. Knowing which churches served breakfast on which mornings, which gas station bathroom the attendant would let you use without hassle, which shelter beds filled up fast and which ones you could still get into if you showed up by 6. But now there were 2 of them and the system had to change. The first thing Loretta did, the very next morning after the porch, was walk Micah 4 miles to Riverside Elementary and enroll him in the 3rd grade using an address that technically didn't exist anymore. Her sister's old house, foreclosed on 2 years back, but still showing up in the county system if you knew which clerk to smile at. Dialogue, school secretary. And you're his mother? Dialogue, Loretta. Guardian. His mama passed. I'm looking after him now. Dialogue School Secretary. I'll need some documentation for. Dialogue Loretta. Ma'am, I got a boy who hasn't had a hot lunch in 2 days and hasn't sat in a classroom in 6 weeks. You can chase paperwork, or you can let him in that door right now and we sort the rest out after. Your call. Narration. The secretary looked at Micah, clean as Loretta could get him with gas station bathroom soap, hair combed flat with water, wearing a donated jacket 2 sizes too big, and something in her expression cracked. Dialogue School Secretary. Room 14. Down the hall, second door on the left. Narration. That became the rhythm of their days. Loretta would walk Micah to school every morning, then spend her hours collecting cans, asking for work outside the hardware store, sometimes standing at the intersection off Route 9 with a cardboard sign that made her stomach turn every single time she held it up. She hated it. She'd been a home health aide once, years ago, before her husband's death, and the medical bills that followed swallowed everything she owned. But hate didn't put food on the table, and now there was a boy counting on her to figure it out. Every afternoon without fail, she was standing outside Riverside Elementary at 3:15 when the bell rang. Dialogue Micah. You didn't have to come every day. Dialogue Loretta. Baby, I told you. Nobody's ever leaving you standing alone again. Every day means every day. Narration. Micah's teacher, a woman named Ms. Patterson, noticed things. She noticed the same jacket, the same worn shoes, the way Micah flinched slightly whenever another kid's parent picked them up in a nice car. She noticed how sharp the boy was, reading 2 grade levels ahead, doing math in his head faster than kids twice his age, and how quiet he stayed about everything else. One Tuesday in late October, she pulled Loretta aside. Dialogue Miss Patterson. Can I ask you something? And I don't mean this the wrong way. Dialogue Loretta. Go ahead. Dialogue Miss Patterson. Are you two doing okay? Do you have somewhere stable to stay? Narration. Loretta felt her chest tighten. She knew exactly where this conversation could go. A phone call to child services, a caseworker, a system that had a bad habit of separating people instead of helping them. Dialogue Loretta. We're managing. Dialogue Miss Patterson. I'm not asking to report anybody. I run a small program through the church on Delridge. We help families get back on their feet. Housing assistance, job placement. I could put in a word for you both if you wanted. Narration. Loretta almost said no. Pride was a heavy thing to set down. But she looked through the window of the classroom, at Micah packing up his backpack, laughing. Actually laughing. At something a classmate said, and she realized pride wasn't worth as much as she used to think it was. Dialogue Loretta. I'd appreciate that. I truly would. Narration. What Loretta didn't know was that Ms. Patterson's church program worked in partnership with legal aid volunteers from downtown, including a paralegal named Yolanda Reyes, who spent her Thursday evenings helping families with everything from eviction notices to custody paperwork. And what Yolanda Reyes would discover 3 weeks later, while helping Loretta file for emergency guardianship of Micah, was a name that stopped her cold when she ran it through the county records system. Turner Micah A. Beneficiary. Estate of Angela M. Turner. Trust value. Pending final assessment. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in months. The law office of Robert Ashford, the trustee who'd been searching for a missing 8-year-old boy since March. Dialogue Yolanda. Mr. Ashford? This is Yolanda Reyes over at Delridge Legal Aid. I think I might know where your missing beneficiary is. Narration. 11 miles away, under a bridge on Route 9, Loretta was tucking a blanket around a sleeping boy, having absolutely no idea that the world was about to turn upside down for both of them, and that Dale Whitfield's quiet, comfortable life was about to end the same way he'd ended Micah's childhood. Without warning. On a doorstep. In the rain. Segment final. What was always his? Narration. Robert Ashford didn't waste time. 2 days after Yolanda's call, he was standing under the overpass on Route 9 himself, in a suit that looked completely out of place against the concrete and rust, holding a folder that would change everything. Loretta saw him coming and immediately stepped in front of Micah, every instinct in her body bracing for the worst. A caseworker, a cop, somebody finally here to take the boy away from her after all these months of keeping him safe. Dialogue Loretta. Whatever this is, he's not going anywhere. I don't care what paper you're holding. Dialogue, Robert Ashford. Ma'am, please. I'm not here to take him anywhere. My name is Robert Ashford. I was Angela Turner's attorney. I've been looking for this boy for almost 8 months. Narration. He knelt down so he was eye level with Micah and spoke gently. Dialogue, Robert Ashford. Your mom loved you more than you probably ever realized, son. She set something aside for you. Something big. And it's been sitting there this whole time, waiting for somebody to find you. Narration. The trust was real. For $0.2 million, grown from investments Angela had made quietly in the 2 years before cancer took her. Money she protected specifically so that no one but her son could ever touch it. Not Dale. Not anyone. Loretta sat on the curb and cried for the first time since the night on the porch, not from grief this time, but from something closer to disbelief, the sheer dizzying relief of watching a door open after months of walking through locked ones. Dialogue, Loretta. He's really taken care of? For real. Dialogue, Robert Ashford. For real. College, housing, everything. And ma'am, the court's going to want to talk to you too. Angela's will named a legal guardian in the event something happened to her before Micah turned 18. Someone she trusted. Dialogue, Loretta. Who? Dialogue, Robert Ashford. Whoever ends up raising him with love. That's the language she used. Her lawyer said she wrote it herself. She said, and I'm quoting her exactly, I don't care about blood. I care about who shows up. Narration. Loretta showed up. Every single day for 6 weeks, in the rain, in the cold, with nothing to her name but a busted shopping cart and a promise. The court didn't take long to decide who deserved to raise that boy. Narration. Word travels fast in a town like this one, and it didn't take long for it to reach Dale Whitfield's front door. He was mowing his lawn on a Saturday afternoon, the same porch behind him where he'd once stood in the doorway, dry and warm, while a woman with nothing took in the boy he'd thrown away. A car pulled up. Robert Ashford stepped out, folder in hand. Dialogue, Dale. Can I help you? Dialogue, Robert Ashford. Dale Whitfield? I need to inform you that as part of the Turner estate proceedings, you're being formally removed from any custodial or financial claim regarding Micah Turner. Also, you'll be receiving a letter from the county. Abandonment charges are being reviewed. Dialogue, Dale. Abandonment? I gave him to somebody. He's fine, isn't he? Dialogue, Robert Ashford. He's better than fine, Mr. Whitfield. He's a millionaire. Something you might have known, if you'd ever returned a single one of my calls. Narration. Dale stood frozen on his lawn, mower idling beside him, as the weight of what he'd thrown away on that rainy porch finally landed. Not the boy had been a burden to him, an inconvenience wrapped in a grief he never wanted to carry. But the money he could have controlled, could have used, could have built a different life around if he'd simply stayed decent for one more year. He thought about what the homeless woman had told him that night, kneeling in the rain with her hand on his door. You're gonna regret this. Not next week. Not next year. But someday. Someday had arrived faster than he expected. Narration. 1 year later, Micah stood on a different porch, this one attached to a small but sturdy house on Maple Street, purchased outright, paid for by a trust his mother had built out of love and protected with foresight. Loretta stood beside him, wearing a coat that actually fit, her hair no longer hidden under a baseball cap but cut and cared for, her eyes clear and steady in a way they hadn't been in years. Cooper and Denise had moved in down the street. Loretta had made sure of that, using part of the trust's approved family stipend to get both of them off the bridge and into real apartments, because she never forgot who'd given a blanket to a scared little boy on his very first night. Micah, now 9, sat on the porch steps doing his homework. A golden retriever puppy named Rusty curled up beside him. He looked up at Loretta. Dialogue, Micah. Do you think he's sorry? Dale. Dialogue, Loretta. Doesn't matter much either way, baby. Sorry doesn't undo what a person does. It's what somebody does next that tells you who they really are. Dialogue, Micah. What about you? What did you do next? Narration. Loretta smiled, sitting down beside him on the steps of the home that was finally truly theirs. Dialogue, Loretta. I showed up. Every single day. That's all it ever takes, Micah. Showing up when nobody's making you. Narration. And that was the truth of it. The whole story distilled down to one porch, one rainy night, and one decision that separated two very different people. Dale Whitfield had a house, a family, and every resource a person could need, and he chose to walk away from a child because it was easier than staying. Loretta had nothing. No house. No money. No obligation whatsoever to a boy that wasn't hers by blood or by law. And she chose to stay anyway, because somewhere along the way she'd learned that family was never about what you're given. It was about who chooses to stand with you when everyone else walks inside and shuts the door. The end.